Hare Krishna everyone, welcome back to the reading of Dialectic, Spiritualism, a Vedic View on Western Philosophy by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are Shravanam Diaries podcast. I'm your host Sulalita Devidasi. We are starting chapter number 11 entitled Karl Marx. With his Communist Manifesto, beginning with the ominous, quote, "A specter is haunting Europe, the specter of communism," unquote, and ending with the clarion call, "Workers of the world, unite!" The German philosopher Karl Marx, 1818 to 1883, launched the communist movement. In the following dialogue, Srila Prabhupada focuses on why those who have tried to put Marxist philosophy into practice have been frustrated in their attempts to eradicate greed from human nature and society at large. Disciple. Karl Marx contended that philosophers have only interpreted the world. The point is to change it. His philosophy is often called dialectical materialism because it comes from the dialectic of George Hegel, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. When applied to society, his philosophy is known as communism. His idea is that for many generations, the bourgeoisie have competed with the proletariat, and that this conflict will terminate in the communist society. In other words, the workers will overthrow the capitalistic class and establish a so-called dictatorship of the proletariat, which will finally become a classless society. Srila Prabhupada. But how is a classless society possible? Men naturally fall into different classes. Your nature is different from mine, so how can we artificially be brought to the same level? Disciple. His idea is that human nature or ideas are molded by the means of production. Therefore, everyone can be trained to participate in the classless society. Srila Prabhupada. Then training is required. Disciple. Yes. Srila Prabhupada. And what will be the center of training for this classless society? What will be the motto? Disciple. The motto is, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. The idea is that everyone would contribute something and everyone would get what he needed. Srila Prabhupada. But everyone's contribution is different. A scientific man contributes something and the philosopher contributes something else. The cow contributes milk and the dog contributes service as a watchdog. Even the trees, the birds, the beasts, everyone is contributing something. So by nature, a reciprocal arrangement is already there, already there among social classes. How can there be a classless society? Disciple. Well, Marx's idea is that the means of production will be owned in common, no one would have an advantage over anyone else, and thus one person could not exploit another. Marx is thinking in terms of profit. Srila Prabhupada. First, we must know what profit actually is. For example, the American hippies already had, in quotes, profit. They were from the best homes. Their fathers were rich. They had everything. Yet, they were not satisfied. They rejected it. No, this idea of a classless society based on profit sharing is imperfect. Besides, the communists have not created a classless society. We have seen in Moscow how a poor woman will wash the streets while her boss sits comfortably in his car. So where is the classless society? As long as society is maintained, there must be some higher and lower classification. But if the central point of society is one, then whether one works in a lower or a higher position, he doesn't care. For example, our body has different parts: the head, the legs, the hands, but everything works for the stomach. Disciple. Actually, the Russians supposedly have the same idea. They claim the common worker is just as glorious as the top scientist or manager. Srila Prabhupada. But in Moscow, we have seen that not everyone is satisfied. One boy who came to us was very unhappy because in Russia, young boys are not allowed to go out at night. Disciple. The Russian authorities would say that he has an improper understanding of Marxist philosophy. Srila Prabhupada. That improper understanding is inevitable. They will never be able to create a classless society because, as I have already explained, everyone's mentality is different. Disciple. Marx says that if everyone is engaged according to his abilities in a certain type of production, and everyone works for the central interest, then everyone's ideas will become uniform. Srila Prabhupada. Therefore, we must find out the real central interest. In our International Society for Krishna Consciousness, everyone has a central interest in Krishna. Therefore, one person is speaking, another is typing, another is going to the press or washing dishes, and no one is grudging because they're all convinced they're serving Krishna. Disciple. Marx's idea is that the center is the state. Srila Prabhupada. But the state cannot be perfect. If the Russian state is perfect, then why was Khrushchev driven from power? He was elected premier. Why was he driven from power? Disciple. Because he was not fulfilling the aims of people. Srila Prabhupada. Well then, what is the guarantee the next premier will do that? There is no guarantee. The same thing will happen again and again, because the center, Khrushchev, was imperfect. People begrudged their labor. The same thing is going on in non-communist countries as well. The government is changed, the prime minister is deposed, the president is impeached. So what is the real difference between Russian communism and other political systems? What is happening in other countries is also happening in Russia, only they call it by a different name. When we talked with Professor Kotovsky of Moscow University, we told him he had to surrender. Either he must surrender to Krishna or to Lenin, but he must surrender. He was taken aback at this. Disciple. From studying history, Marx concluded that the characteristics of culture, the social structure, and even the thoughts of the people are determined by the means of economic production. Srila Prabhupada. How does he account for all the social disruption in countries like America, which is so advanced in economic production? Disciple. He says that capitalism is a decadent form of economic production because it relies on the exploitation of one class by another. Srila Prabhupada. But there is exploitation in the communist countries also. Khrushchev was driven out of power because he was exploiting his position. He was giving big government posts to his son and son-in-law. Disciple. He was deviating from the doctrine. Srila Prabhupada. But since any leader can deviate, how will perfection come? First, the person in the center must be perfect. Then his dictations will be correct. Otherwise, if the leaders are all imperfect men, then what is the use of changing this or that? The corruption will continue. Disciple. Presumably, the perfect leader would be the one who practiced Marx's philosophy without deviation. Srila Prabhupada. But Marx's philosophy is also imperfect. His proposal for a classless society is unworkable. There must be one class of men to administer the government and one class of men to sweep the streets. How can there be a classless society? Why should a sweeper be satisfied seeing someone else in the administrative post? He will think, he is forcing me to work as a sweeper in the street while he sits comfortably in a chair. In our Krishna conscious society, in our international society, I am also holding the superior post. I am sitting in a chair, and you are offering me garlands and the best food. Why? Because you see a perfect man whom you can follow. That mentality must be there. Everyone in the society must be able to say, yes, here is a perfect man. Let him sit in a chair. Let us all bow down and work like menials. Where is that perfect man in the communist countries? Disciple. The Russians claim that Lenin is a perfect man. Srila Prabhupada. Lenin? But no one is following Lenin. Lenin's perfection was that he overthrew the Tsar's government. What other perfection did he show? The people are not happy simply reading Lenin's books. I studied the people in Moscow. They are unhappy. The government cannot force them to be happy artificially. Unless there is a perfect, ideal man in the center, there cannot possibly be a classless society. Disciple. Perhaps they see the workers and the managers in the same way we do, in the absolute sense, since everyone is serving the state, the sweeper is as good as the administrator. Srila Prabhupada. But unless the state gives perfect satisfaction to the people, there will always be distinctions between higher and lower classes. In the Russian state, that sense of perfection in the center is lacking. Jai, we're going to stop here for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. The link to this book is in the description, and we shall see you next time. Hare Krishna. Okay, I'll just quickly say a few things about this, just a few short things. One is that if you ask many, like the generation that lived in Soviet Union, you will hear that they were quite happy because education, medicine, these things were free, and you could travel around the country, and they did not have all the goods from outside Soviet Union, but people were quite satisfied, they will say. But as Srila Prabhupada, he visited Soviet Union, and as he says, he observed that they were not happy. And he preached, and one sincere person actually took up Krishna consciousness, and he started preaching in Soviet Union. And the story is such a tragic story of how he tried to preach Krishna consciousness, to basically distribute Srila Prabhupada's books and put Krishna in center of their lives. And they were persecuted, they were arrested, they were all sort of horrible things were happening to those aspiring devotees. So from one side, like, it's a bit of a kind of a artificial utopian idea that everyone can be happy, but only in the way that we want you to be, otherwise we will kill you or something, you know? So yes, we will have few days reading this chapter, so stay tuned. Hare Krishna.